we can't hear this. It's going, I haven't turned it on yet. When I do, it's going to blast out a 65 kilohertz beam. Because the wavelength is so small, it doesn't spread. Because 65 kilohertz has a wavelength like that. So it's going to be, in that sense, similar to a laser. It just comes right out as a beam. Now, how do we make that audible? Well, they put a modulation on top of the 65 kilohertz. There's a modulation. And now, here's the next thing I have to tell you. That 65 kilohertz is very high amplitude. It won't hurt you, we don't think. Okay? You certainly can't hear it, and we don't think it'll hurt you. And it's very high amplitude. And what happens when you have two sound waves like this, sound plus sound can create sound, but only at high amplitudes. At low amplitudes, sound waves just travel right through each other. You may be sort of familiar with this. But at high amplitudes, you can create sound. So what happens in this apparatus is the audio sound, the sound that you're going to hear, is actually created in the beam, not here. And because it's created in the beam and it stays in the beam, we have a beam of sound. So let me demonstrate this for you. Let me turn it on. And I'm going to find the piece of music that we like.
Yeah.
You may not like it.
The Eagles? You like the Eagles? Okay, good. Oh, we have a friendly audience this year.
Yeah. I think they're just saying that to make us feel better.
Right. All right.
It's worth the $2,000. It's not our money. Now, the sound that you're hearing is being created in this beam. It almost sounds like it's coming from your head. So let me try to scan the whole audience so everybody gets to hear this. Absolutely remarkable. Pete, are you getting it? Let's try to, one more thing. Let's try to bounce it off the wall. Raise your hand if you can very clearly hear it. I'm going to try to bounce it off the wall. Look at where the hands are raised. It's
Hey, Inspired Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. It's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Monday, October 28th, 2024. We're healthy, we're wealthy, we're whole, we're free. That's the mantra here at Inspired. Thank you for joining us on X Rumble and YouTube. We apologize if the internet connection is not optimal. These troubles have been following us all year, on and off. I wonder if it has something to do with what we talk about. It's a great honor to see you all. I also wanted to quickly, and this is going to go into today's subject, address the small controversy here. And actually, I welcome every controversy. It always ignites some really good thoughts. But last week, Frank Jacob and I, on Friday, I believe, we did a Naked Truth show. Frank Jacob's been with us many, many times. A lot of great shows, a lot of great research. But on Friday, he introduced an observation that he made through a guy named Jim Lee, watching what he has studied and what he has found, and voiced his observation that what we perceive to be chemtrails, what we call chemtrails, what we've all seen in the skies, and a lot of research around this, might not be the kind of program that we thought it was. Now, I'll be honest with you, I disagree with this assessment. That doesn't mean I agree with everything that's out there about chemtrails, but that's exactly what today's subject is about. Frank Jacob has been a great researcher on many subjects, and, I can sense that his intention has always been pure. So in that regard, the reaction from the audience was strong, and that's fine. People react the way they react. But I do think that today's subject might help all of us to remind ourselves just how this war is being fought and how we are the target. You are the target. I'm the target of this. I'm going to explain what I mean by that, and how we shouldn't, it's a strong word, but how we really shouldn't resort to fighting each other so strongly on sometimes minute details, because it's very likely that none of us has the exact facts around those minute details. So the reason why the subject is highly important is because there's a misperception, and that misperception or misconception, if you will, stems from an observation that we all might have made years ago. So let me explain what I mean by all of that. I don't want to talk in cryptic circles here. So there's an information paradigm, and this information paradigm has vastly changed over the last years and short decades. So up to 40% of the worldwide population, and this is a conservative estimate, by the way, receives at least part of their information from alternative media sources. Approximately the same number of people believe in one or more conspiracy theories, according to institutions like Pew Research Center, Gallup, and others. I'm not saying these are necessarily accurate numbers, but if anything, they might be underplayed rather than overplayed. It could be more people. The information paradigm has shifted dramatically in the last years. Alternative media and non-institutional information outlets appear to be the main focus of PSYOP operations. And this is what we really need to own in on. And this is what we're going to go into. So we all understand today, you do, you're an incredibly intelligent audience. You know stuff like Operation Mockingbird, or how the mainstream media outlets, mainstream magazines in the past, mainstream TV shows, all of this has been heavily influenced and targeted by information operations, which means that they're not simply reporting, as we all know, on the news and giving an objective perspective, but they are specifically putting out narratives, have been under full control for a very long time. So that's the mainstream thing. But there's a misconception that this principle does not necessarily apply to the alternative media, and it couldn't be further from the truth, especially in the last years. For the majority of people that watch or read alternative media, the information sphere appears to be binary. One, what the mainstream media reports, which people perceive to be a lie, and two, what the alternative media reports, which people perceive to be a truth. The reality is vastly more complex, and information warfare has multiple layers and tentacles, like an octopus, mixing truth with lies, creating false trails, promoting certain voices heavily, etc. The goal is to create an alternative narrative that satisfies the audience enough but does not endanger the real agenda. I call this today the Wuhan lab leak narrative. Why? The Wuhan lab leak narrative is complete bullshit. All of my research tells me it's a complete bullshit, like complete invention, a figment of someone's imagination. But what did it do? It satisfied a lot of people that saw something was wrong, that didn't believe the narrative. It was an officially created false trail conspiracy theory that you can, under no circumstances, ever prove to be right or even really prove to be wrong. You can just look at other provable things that point to the fact that that was a complete invention. Because what it did not do, the Wuhan lab leak theory didn't fundamentally change anything about the narrative itself. It simply created a path that a lot of people jumped on and said, oh, they lied about where it came from. They didn't say they lied about it. They lied about where it came from. They didn't say they lied about anything of that. They just simply steered people in a direction, and people were very satisfied with that because their preferred channels, their preferred podcasters, their preferred speakers and authors and whatnot were all rooting for that theory. But they didn't go deep enough on the rest. And that was the entire goal. And this is how such operations work. So let's look. Thank you so much, Metaphysical Mike. I appreciate it. Let's look a little at an example, maybe. We're going to take a hypothetical here, friends. Let me make sure you hear me. We're going to do a hypothetical here, okay? Let's say one of your goals was to terraform the world we live in, terraform, completely change the makeup of what we perceive to be nature and atmosphere and whatnot. For some reason, it would serve you your overall agenda to create different atmospheric, weather, and overall living conditions. Perhaps you're part of a species that needs those changes and you have access to technologies that allow you to create them. Severe sudden changes, however, are known to upset humans and usually lead to very chaotic and rebellious conditions. So how could you do it? Okay, so it's a hypothetical example, but I want you to remember the changes that we've been subjected to are always fairly slow. Only in recent years, and I believe because of some unexpected conditions, the changes have become faster and more visible. But generally speaking, the safest way to roll out such an agenda, especially if it isn't in the interest of humans, is to do it slowly and gradually. The boiling pot theory, right? If you throw a frog into a boiling pot, what's it going to do? It's going to jump out. If you put it in cold water and just slowly turn up temperature, it was said that the frog will not jump out when the water gets hot enough to kill it. Well, that's exactly the theory, right? So if you wanted to do this, terraform this Earth, what we perceive to be this Earth, change the conditions, how would you go about it? Well, let's look at a theory here. Maybe this rings a bell. You would establish a cover story, frame environmental changes as a result of man-made climate crisis. Introduce appropriate narratives of necessary changes and interventions portrayed as essential for survival. Back this with scientific studies from aligned institutions, ensuring it gains traction across media and education. Control information channels. Secure compliance from mainstream media, governmental and global organizations. Create a narrative monopoly with regulatory policies promoting accurate information while labeling dissent as misinformation. Partner with influencers and public figures to bolster credibility. Preemptive discrediting. Here we're going into the things that really matter. Seed fringe theories. For example, alien involvement or secret government weaponry that distract from the true goal. Encourage high-profile conspiracy theorists to publicize exaggerated claims so real clues are buried beneath discredited narratives. Now, this doesn't mean that some very outrageous forms of technologies wouldn't be involved. But what you are doing, and perhaps in simpler terms, you have a goal. You know that the goal that you have, if you put it out in the open, will never be accepted. You'll be fought on it, but you want to accomplish it. So then you need to create a cover story that either has nothing to do with your real goal or it puts it in a completely different light. But here's what most people don't think about. They think, okay, the media is lying, maybe the government's lying, and maybe the academia is lying, but there are the truth seekers, the alternative media, and they're telling a different story. Now, what you have to consider is that the story that they're telling has been planted as well as a false theory, or at least having enough false elements to never get the truth. And so everybody's satisfied because there is opposition. Well, the alternative media, they're opposing this. They're figuring out the truth. The vast majority today of the alternative media, in my perception, seems to be to a certain degree or fully controlled. The big voices to a large degree, the smaller voices, because of the trickle-down principle. They pick up the big subjects from the bigger voices and they talk about them in a similar way. And so it's not too difficult to plant theories that you want pursued over months and months and months, because what is your goal? If you are the one creating all this shit, your goal is to keep people passive or non-active or not significantly active or not really active for as long as possible, because you want to fulfill your goal. You want to keep people pacify or give them the appearance that somebody's doing something significant about it. All the while, nothing really is happening. This is what is happening when people always want to have someone else do the work for them, or they always want someone else to take the action. And this is what the alternative media, to a large degree, unfortunately, has become. I mean, whether you like that or not, whether I like it, I don't like it, but consider this. More than 50% of Americans watch one or more alternative media sources. At the very most, 20% of Americans, at the very most, have trust in the mainstream media. So if you are a nefarious force, where do you put your attention? The mainstream media is so under control, you don't need to put a lot of attention there. Where you need to put your attention now is the alternative media. That's where you need to put the resources. That's where you need to put your agents in. That's where you need to put the new Operation Mockingbird in. And that's what you need to start controlling fully. And you and I, we're the target of that. Let's go on here a little bit before I talk about what we can do about it. Gradual environmental shifts. So we're still on the hypothetical idea of terraforming the Earth. Implement slow yet noticeable changes, like more storms, rainfall, or droughts. Continue the man-made climate crisis narrative to explain these changes and continue pushing for actions against those changes. See, you're playing both sides. You are the perpetrator and the victim and the opposition. This reduces backlash as people receive explanations for the changes they're noticing. When you give people a story that they can believe in, more often than not, they will believe in it because it's comfortable. Societal conditioning. Introduce new health measures, food modifications, and lifestyle adaptations framed as necessary and adaptations to a changing world. Integrate these through global health organizations to make them ubiquitous and normalize new health impacts. Does that sound familiar at all? Thank you, Charlotte. Really appreciate it. Manage backlash. Establish a narrative to blame critics for stalling life-saving climate actions. Utilize controlled opposition to channel resistance toward trivial or misleading theories, while any real whistleblowers are marginalized. It's a big thing. I'm often amazed, not really, but often amazed at how some of the most significant truth seekers, whistleblowers that really put out, I mean, detailed, clear, and accurate information, never make it on the circuit. The circuit being the alternative media, the big outlets, they never go on there. And then there are others who have very spotty narratives with a lot of holes in it and have not a lot of concrete stuff to say, and they make it big time. I mean, they get millions of views, they go on the circuit, they're on the shows. And the real ones, of course, are not. So what I've noticed about this entire sphere is that the subjects that mainstream media picks up in order to discredit them, for example, chemtrails, are usually smoke screens for what's really going on. And I'm not saying chemtrails are not going on. We have all seen the incredible changes over the years. All of us who've been looking up have been noticing the shifting patterns. We've been noticing how the sky looks different. We've been noticing the cloud covers. But what we might have misinterpreted or misread is the real reason for it. We're just now getting closer to the real reasons why, maybe. And it's not just one reason. I think it's a whole number of reasons. But when the mainstream media focuses on discrediting something very often, what does it actually do? It draws attention to it. When the mainstream media doesn't talk about it at all, doesn't even want to discredit it, that's usually something that might be more interesting because they don't want to draw any attention to it, positive or negative. Those are the subjects we might need to look into more. Oops, where did that go? Let's see. There was it, the managing backlash. Yeah, we already covered that part. So the idea that we can trust anyone who challenges the mainstream media, that idea is over with. We have to become much more streetwise on this. We have to realize that we're at the end game. All bets are off. All gloves have come off. And they're going to go as hard as they need to string you along for as long as they can. You are now the target. The mainstream media audience, they're not worried about them. Not at all. They don't pose a threat whatsoever. It's the 50+% of people who watch alternative media. And I'll give you an interesting perspective. They don't look like people who watch mainstream media, alternative media. They look like everyone else. And only when certain subjects get mentioned, you can see something in their eyes more and more often. I have to have these conversations with strangers every now and then to remind myself just how many people out there are paying attention. But what are they paying attention to? And that is the big question. Are the let's just say, are the subjects that the big names, the Tucker Carlsons, the Russell Brands, the whatever, Jordan Petersons, the Daily Wire people, and all the others, are these subjects actually creating a real shift, or are they just shifting the weight around within the existing paradigm? Because this is what I'm seeing. They're just shifting the weight around within the existing paradigm. They're not paradigm shaking subjects. And if they are, they're only touched on very, very shortly. They don't want to break the paradigm. But we are here to break the paradigm. We need to be brave. So how do you distinguish real voices from non-real voices? The truth is, and you have to become a researcher yourself. And what does it mean? Watching me talk about something, well, if I'm thankful that you're here. We love you, we appreciate you. However, taking my word for it isn't a good tactic. Taking anyone's word for it isn't a good tactic. The best thing you could do is look at for example, the big organizations, the public organizations, even the UNs of the world, the World Health Organizations, the World Economic Forums, all these organizations, and read the documents that they put out and start contrasting and comparing. Read between the lines. Look at what they're putting out. Look at where the trends in the world are going. Look at what the governments are putting out and start connecting the dots yourself. This is tedious work, reading hundreds and thousands of pages of documents. But like I've said many times, really my probably the first, not the first research subject of mine, but the first forensic research subject of mine was 9/11. That was the first topic where I did forensic research, where I went into all the databases that I could find, and I looked at all the data that I could find from the FAA to the Social Security Death Index to all the other databases that were connected to that subject, and I tediously gathered data. That data at a certain after you've gathered enough of it, it speaks to you. It shows you an image. When you do it for half an hour, you don't see anything. When you do it for a day, you don't see anything. When you do it for a month or even a year, now those data points start speaking and telling you a narrative. It's the truth in front of you. It's the facts. And then you connect those dots and you go further out and you wonder what else could be connected to this. And you go further, and that's how this research works on a sort of a worldly level, if you want to understand the mechanisms of the world, right? So this is the methodology that needs to be applied, and that's also what I consider, to be the way that adults should go about it. The other stuff is pretty childish. Somebody looks the part or acts the part, tells you something, you just take them at the word. I don't believe in that. So this all ties back to the beginning of this conversation when I shared about the last Naked Truth show with Frank Jacob, which I think overall was a very insightful conversation that I enjoyed a lot. But I understand one thing: whether I talk to Frank Jacob, whether I talk to David Icke, or whether I talk to anyone else, nobody, and I mean nobody, gets it right all the time. That, of course, and especially includes me. Nobody gets it right all the time. We can intuitively be on the right path, but still get the details wrong. These are sophisticated operations. And today, 20, 30, 40 years ago, they were targeting millions of people at the same time with the same information. Today, the algorithm is targeting you specifically, you, the individual. The algorithm knows you. It researches and analyzes you. It gives you the information that it deems will most likely achieve its goal on you. It's a very different game. The psyops are vastly different. Psyops used to be mass population operations. Now they're individually targeted. Now they're individually crafted. And that's been going on for at least, on this sophisticated level, for at least 10 years, if not longer. So we are once again taking this full circle back to your personal responsibility. If you just go at this with your brain, with your mind, you will not succeed. My experience is that when I tap into my connection with spirit, with higher consciousness, that is my guiding light. That is true intuition. It's not like it spells out the fact for me on paper, but it makes me feel, literally feel, whether I'm on the wrong or on the right track. And in this intro clip today, we showed you a technology that, compared to what is out there, is fairly primitive now, but it's sort of a voice or sound to skull technology, if you will. And a lot of people are very focused on those technologies, how our minds can be manipulated, how things can be put into our mind. And those technologies are sophisticated and they're around, yes. But here's the thing. The main focus is still the narratives pushed through alternative media voices. Why? People don't necessarily trust thoughts that just pop into their minds. Most people are not programmed like that. They have to see it in the outward world. They have to hear it from somebody else. They have to see documentaries and something tangible. So the thing that appears in your mind, that's very specific, but that's not the full picture. So I don't want to say all these people are fake, like all the alternative media voices are fake. That's likely not true. But you can have influence over people in many different ways. You can steer their narrative in many different ways. A lot of times it's being done through partnerships. A lot of times some very charismatic and very intelligent people are being introduced to you. And for example, I'll give this to you from our perspective. We do not accept content suggestions from anyone, especially our partners. So if we partner like we did with, Tim James, Chemical Free Body, because we love his company, we love his products, it's amazing. We make it clear from the get-go. You never get to edit, tell us what we talk about or how we talk about it. You actually don't even get to suggest, unless we ask you for it, what you might feel would be important. This is one way that we shield ourselves. We are being approached very often by people who want to grow our podcast, our channel, and whatnot, and we turn them down all the time because these are all opportunities on how to influence the work, what we do. Because what is the first thing that they tell you? This is the first thing that growth strategists tell you. Analyze what kind of content works on your channel, analyze what has the most views and what has the most viewer retention, and then focus on that subject. But what is that focused on? That's focused on success, on numbers, on viewers, on getting more. But that's not what our work's about. Our work is about presenting the truth as we find it, empowering people to take personal responsibility. It has nothing to do with numbers. If the numbers grow, wonderful, that means we're reaching more people. But that can't be the focus. If that were the focus, I wouldn't talk about half the stuff I talk about because I piss people off by doing it. And that's the first thing they tell you. Don't piss people off. Don't trigger them. Don't get them out of their comfort zone. Give them what they want. I don't believe in that. That is bullshit. That's bullshit in every industry, and it's bullshit in media, alternative media, research, personal empowerment. That's a bullshit strategy. But this is what the mainstream alternative is doing, and I'm amazed as to how boring their line of subjects has become. It's all the same, always the same stories, always the same crap, and never going deeper. And this is what we want to do. We want to go all the way. Whatever that means, we'll find out what that means, but we want to go all the way. And we are simply asking you, do you also want to go all the way? Because if we can agree on that together, I think we'll have much more success in doing it. And then if we find different things or sometimes even conflicting information, let's look at all the info. Let's look at it without fully believing it or without being fully attached to it. You know, science has turned into scientism, a religion, where it's bubbles of belief boxes. And I think science has a very valid place in our lives if we do it right. And science cannot have boundaries. It cannot stop at a subject just because that subject is deemed metaphysical. No, science has to include all the data and all the evidence and the anecdotes, because anecdotes is what drives science. If you hear 5, 6, 7, 8 people from different places in the world that don't know each other, the same story, as unlikely as it might sound, after 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 accounts, you need to say, we got to look into this. This is strange. There's something going on here, even if it's completely crazy. That's what science, real science should do. And that's what real researchers should do. And so right now, I think the one subject, as I have been saying now for very long, the one subject that is not really being allowed to be researched on a meaningful level is, what is the true nature of this reality? I mean, religions have talked about it, spiritual traditions have talked about it, but none of that is ever taken seriously by by the people, if you will, and they're not basing their lives on it really. So the most important subject that is not really being allowed to be discovered is, what is the nature of our reality? And I think we might, if we do it right, we might actually come to a very concrete answer versus these mythical answers that people have been given for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So that seems to be, in reality, the most censored subject, which makes it one of the most interesting ones. I think one of the most important ones. So like I said in previous shows, we're going to focus a lot on that. We're going to extend our research into that. And we want to bring it beyond channelings, anecdotes, into some tangible evidence. I think we can do that. All right, my friends.
Nancy's asking, what's FLFE?
Nancy is asking, what is FLFE? Okay, that's actually a great way to end the show. Because I talked about our partners earlier, FLFE is a company called Focused Life Force Energy. And it was founded by 2 people, Jeffrey and Clayton, who are incredible allies for humanity. Some of the most amazing folks in the world today. And I don't say this lightly, by the way. And their mission, they've worked together in different ways for, I think, over 20 years, but their mission was, how do we create the optimal conditions for human consciousness to rise? So that was, and not just human consciousness as a whole. I think that is a very clear, a very precise, and a very worthy goal. And they're doing it in many ways, but they one of the significant ways that they're doing it is by using a technology, a spiritual quantum technology that can activate a high consciousness field around you, a device of yours, or your home, for example. And that high consciousness field, by the way, doesn't mean you are automatically at that level of consciousness, but it it's almost like it emulates or has a similar effect as if you were going to a pilgrimage site. Like, you know, people go to Arizona, people go to Mount Shasta, people go to Machu Picchu, people go to what is it called, Stonehenge, you know, and have experiences there. What do these places have in common? They have in common that the average level of consciousness, and you can measure that, there's a way to measure this, the average level of consciousness is higher than in all other places. So then you have different experiences, then you feel better, you might heal easier, you might get spiritual insights or other insights. Even, you know, you might have been in a big fight before, but once you walk into that field with your partner, all of a sudden it's more harmonious. And you know, as anti-tech a guy as I am, believe me, I am fully on board with FLFE. We have done a year of incredible collaboration, unlike anything Christine and I have ever done in collaboration since our days and days and days of conversations. And the principle is very simple. It works with quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement, in very simple term, means that distance does not play a role for energy. And there are scientific studies that show if particles are split, and those particles that used to be one particle, now they're split in two, and now they're being pushed apart a very, very long distance. So there's a lot of distance between those two particles that used to be one. And then they manipulate the one particle and trigger a reaction in the particle. At the exact same time, the other particle who didn't get that trigger still reacts in the same way, which means that there's an invisible connection between the two particles. And that connection does not know distance. And the field, the information field, if you will, is what makes it interact, the quantum entanglement. Using this principle, this technology, once you say, you know, you want to start your free trial with them, they'll give you quick instructions, and a few minutes later, there will be a field activated around your home. That will be a field of around 550 on a consciousness map that was created by a very famous consciousness researcher, Dr. Hawkins. That is, in most cases, significantly higher than anything in your area. The average could be maybe 300. That is 550. 550 on that map equals unconditional love. So basically, a field of unconditional love is then created around you in your home, certain distance. It has incredible EMF mitigation programmed into it. Now, that has nothing to do with AI. You don't need to download a device or anything of that kind. It is quantum entanglement. And the more time that you spend into that you spend in that field, and that you give yourself permission to interact with that field, the more changes you will notice in your health, in your life, in your relationships, and everything, in your business, in your finances. It is a harmonization process. And if you do that, it is, you know, people have said that if a number of people were to meditate in your home for 7-8 hours per day, they might be able to create such a similar effect. And that's probably true. Now, most people don't have a number of people that meditate 7 hours a day in their home. And so by doing that, they are creating FLFE together with the users, if you will, favorable conditions in now thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of places on Earth. And the average level, they're helping to raise the average level faster than ever before. 90% of their work is in service. 10% is business, which allows for the 90% to function. They have a fantastic staff, 50 plus people, that if you start your free trial, you will interact with them. They'll give you a call, and they won't sell you on anything, by the way. They are instructed to assist you, to ask you how you're doing, to give you a few directions like drinking more water. It's really, really important. And that's it. That's their mission. And so we couldn't think of a more important service in the world today, by the way, that is helping so many people on this journey that we're all on. So, unequivocally, Christine and I encourage you to just start the trial. You get 15 days, no credit card or subscription needed, no nothing. It's just a gift from them. If after those 15 days you do want a subscription, they'll tell you how you can do it. But like I said, there are no strings attached to this. And the stories, the success stories that we have received over this year, since over a year now that we've been working with them, are unbelievable, including our own. Just people from one of the two of the I'll give you, and I've shared those before, but just two stories real quick. One was I believe it was a man that was suffering from, and these are all anecdotal. Okay, these are anecdotal, which means these are just stories people tell. It's not medical advice, whatever. And this guy wrote an email and said he had been suffering from insomnia for many years, hadn't slept for more than an hour, maybe at a time, if that, for many years. He couldn't even remember it. So basically, sleep quality horrible. Life usually means life quality not so good. He was on the FLFE service for 2 days in his free trial, and after 2 days, he slept through the night for the first time in God knows how many years. I literally, when I read his account, I literally cried for the man, because I could only imagine what kind of relief that might have been. And then there were so many, but then there was another one, a couple that had maybe more than one child, but they talked about one teenage daughter was severely depressed, and they didn't tell her that they were trying this FLFE thing. Severely depressed, didn't come out of her room, semi-suicidal, no joy, no fun, no happiness, no nothing. They were on a service for a few days. She starts coming out of her room. She starts smiling. She starts cracking jokes. She starts having joy within a few short days. They were over the moon, and we could go on and on and on and on about these testimonials.
Ronnie said, during the hurricane, my electricity came back the same day while others were out for weeks.
Okay, this is a good one. Ronnie, our moderator, a wonderful moderator, by the way, thank you. During the hurricane, electricity came back on the same day. Others around her were out for weeks. The same story was told to us by Chris, our editor. She said the same thing. She came back. They evacuated during Milton. She came back. Everyone else was without power, even water. They had everything. They were literally, for a while, the only house that had everything. No damage. One flower pot that fell over. Now, those are anecdotal stuff. I mean, that's not something that you can scientifically prove. But they have an incredible amount of scientific studies on their website where they studied how the quality of the soil improves, plant growth, how much bigger plants get and how much faster they grow. Our garden is a field test. This year was the best season ever. So I mean, we could go on and on and on. Trust me. What I would encourage you to do, if you haven't yet, start your free trial. Links in the description. Just give it a shot. It is incredible. I mean, just incredible. All right, my friends, thank you so much for tuning in. We love you. We appreciate you. And we will be back with you again very, very soon. I'd love to invite you to experience something incredible that completely changed our lives. And I trust it will do the exact same for you. Now, maybe you have visited a place or walked into a house and just felt an incredible energy, just peace, love, harmony, and you keep returning to those places because they feel so good. Such places exist in nature. Maybe you've heard of them, Machu Picchu or Mount Shasta or other places that are considered to be high consciousness fields. It is where the level of consciousness is literally higher than everywhere else, and people go there to heal, to have spiritual experiences, to meditate, to feel more peace and harmony. Now, our friends over at FLFE, Jeffrey Stegman and Clayton Stedman, have developed a spiritual quantum technology that creates such a high consciousness field around your home or on the go with their mobile service. It is a non-invasive, non-AI technology. There are no downloads or devices that you need. The technology works with quantum entanglement. The results are absolutely amazing. My wife Christine and I did their free trial and we were just blown away by the energy, the better sleep, the better harmony, and especially the EMF mitigation. This absolutely mitigates those effects and creates this field of unconditional love right where you are. I could talk about this all day long, but here's what I think you should do. Click the button down below that says start my free trial and simply experience it for yourself. 15 days, no credit card needed, no strings attached. Trust me, you will love it.